Hello and welcome to the CHEERS Registry Training Series. In this video, we'll be covering how to create a non-residential site in the new CHEERS Registry. So after you log in, you'll be taken directly to the Sites tab, and that's where we'll want to start. So we'll come over here to the right-hand side, and we have our New Site Creation button. So what you'll want to do is if the option you want to select is not present here, it's going to remember the last type that you created. If it's not there, we'll click on the down arrow and that's going to give us our options. So for non-residential, we have three options from which to choose. So for additions and alterations, you can create a non-residential site under the 2016 code. Or if you come down here to new construction, you can create a non-residential site under either the 2013 or 2016 code. Now the process for each of these three is virtually identical. There's a little bit different rules that's applied to each of them depending on where they belong, and that's why we differentiate between them. But the process that I'll show you next is going to be the same regardless of which of those three that you choose. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to select a non-residential new construction under the 2016 code. So what that's going to do, it's going to take us to our project information form. So now this is an official CEC form, but we need to collect some information about the project in order to generate the forms that you need to fill out. So we created this form in the same format as what you're familiar with on the regular CEC forms. So we call this our NRCV PROJ01 form for project information. And then we have it separated into different categories just like you're used to seeing on all the various forms. So it's very easy for you to follow along and provide that information and create those HVAC systems or dwellings for that non-residential project. So we start here with the first one. We have our project name. So this is just going to be whatever project name you want to give it. It's completely up to you. The zip code. And what you'll notice is after I type this in, you can see down here that our city and our building department, there's nothing there. But as soon as I move off of the zip code, you're going to see that those are going to auto populate. And we'll talk about those here in just a second. So site address is again going to be just the address for the non-residential building. And then we get down here now to the city and building department. So we look at the zip code, and that zip code is generally going to be associated with a single city. Sometimes it's more than one city. Maybe it's a county instead of the city. But we get this pretty close. If you need to change it, you can change it. You just simply click on here, highlight it, delete it, and put in whatever you want. For our building departments, we do the same thing. Any building department that is associated with that zip code, we get the one that's the most likely, but we also provide additional options if they exist. So example, this has both San Joaquin County as well as the city of Stockton. So those are the two building departments that are associated with this zip code. Next we have our permit number. And then next we have a selection to let us know if the NRCC, the Certificate of Compliance, requires verification of the multifamily central hot water distribution system. So that's documented on the NRCV PLB 21. So if the Certificate of Compliance says that that's required, then you'll want to change this from no to yes, and then we'll generate that form in site details. It's not taken, this is a very, it's not used very often, so we default it to no, and that's likely what you're going to have. But if it is there, go ahead and change that, and then that form will be made available for you to complete. So the next two deal with how we name each of these either HVAC systems or the dwelling units for the plumbing inspections. So we have two options. Either you can choose the option to have us name these systems. Will auto generate names, and we have a format in which we do that so that it's very easy to follow along. Or you can choose to create your own names for them. So what I'm going to do, so you can see what both of them look like, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to change this one. I'm going to say no, I'm going to name each of my dwellings, but I want the system to name each of my HVAC systems. So that's the end of our first section. So the next section we jump down into is our HVAC system type information. So there's different, there's a potential to have different HVAC types within the same building, whether it's just a regular building or it's a multifamily type building. You may have different ones, and I'll explain kind of what that difference in types means. So if we look down at the information that we have down here, there's two items that will determine the type of HVAC system. So if you have multiple HVAC systems and they all share the same of these two categories, then it's the same type. If one of these two categories is different, then it's going to need to be listed as a separate type. So the first one is for verified low leakage air handling unit. So if that credit was taken on the certificate of compliance, then you'll just select yes that the credit was taken, or if it wasn't, no, the credit was not taken. This will determine which variant of the MECO 4 is made available for you to fill out. The next category is what type of duct system was it? Is it an altered duct system? Is it a new system? Did you have to do a smoke test? So those different ones there. So I'm going to say this is a no credit was taken and it's an alteration. So that's my HVAC system type. Next, I'll need to enter in a installing contractor, and so I'll just start to type in the company name, and there's the company I want, AA HVAC company. It's going to provide you that list. The more information you type in, the smaller that list will get. And then our installing contractor contact name. So who's the foreman on the job, or who's your contact with that HVAC company. And then last, how many HVAC systems of this type are in that non-residential project. So I'm going to say that we have 5 of these type. Okay, so because this is an altered duct system, there's a potential that some of those may have failed the standard alteration test, and you had to do a smoke test. So I'm going to say that I did have to do a smoke test on some of these units, so I'm going to add a second type. Again, I'm going to say this is no low leakage, but this was an alteration. I had to use the smoke test. Again, same thing with our contracting company, and then same thing with our installing contractor contact name, and we'll say that there were 5 of these alteration smoke test systems. So we have 10 HVAC systems altogether. 5 were just a standard alteration, the other 5 were alteration with a smoke test. So that brings us to the end of our HVAC system type identification. If we look down here next, we've got section C, HVAC system IDs or names. Because I chose to have them auto-generated, this section's not going to apply, but we'll look at this down here for our dwellings in a second and see where they apply. So the duct leakage is the most common HEERS verification in non-residential, but there are 2 plumbing verifications that can be done. Because they are not very common, we decided to not display a single item. If we displayed one, then you'd have to come in and delete it, and it seems like they would be deleted more often than they're added. So if you need to do plumbing verification, then what you'll need to do is you'll need to click on the add button here. You'll add in that dwelling or that system type, and then we'll give some basic information and create those systems. So again, same thing with the contractor name, or contractor company, contractor name, and then how many dwellings of that type are there that need to be verified. So we'll say that there's just 10 dwellings. Okay, so if that's all that there is, then we're going to take that number of 10 and we're going to come down here to this dwelling unit ID or names, and we're going to pre-populate with the auto-generated name, but that then allows you to change it from the auto-generated name to whatever name you wanted to give it. So to do that, you can see our auto-generated name lets you know that it's a dwelling unit versus an HVAC unit. It belongs to set number 1, and this is item number 1. So this set number 1, that's going to relate to this item number 1. If we had multiple, like we did up here for HVAC, where we have 2 item types, this would be set number 1 here. This would be set number 2. And we'd have set number 1, 1 through 5, and then set number 2, 1 through 5 to get all of those. Where if we look down here, we can see it's set number 1 and it's item number 1, number 2, number 3, so on and so forth until we get to all 10. So if you want to change the name of this, you simply just highlight it, delete it, or just start typing, and we'll just say that this is number 1. If you hit tab, it's just going to take you right to the next one, and we'll just say we're just going to number all these 1 through 10. And then it's going to show up on our site details as dwellings 1 through 10. So that's pretty much all that there is to the project information form. You can see up here, like with all of our other forms, once everything is filled out that we need, it's going to go to this passing state, and we're going to have the little blue box here to sign it. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to sign this, close it, and that's going to take us back to our site details, and it's going to provide all of the forms that we have to complete. Now we need that information to generate these forms. That's why we have you sign it. That's our process for locking it down, so that you don't go in and make changes while these are in process. The same rules apply if you need to replace this form. It's going to unsign and replace all of these other forms. So all that functionality is the same as anywhere else you're working within the registry. So each of these, you can see these are all of our MECO 4s for duct leakage, and you can see that we've got our auto-generated name. So set 1 is the alteration or the altered duct systems. Set number 2, which is here, those are altered with smoke test. And then we have just items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the way that you'll be able to identify which of those applies which set of criteria. And then down here we go for our plumbing, and you can see that this is the numbers that I gave. So 1 through 10, those are my dwellings, and that's how you will associate those back to the other side. So that pretty much covers the process for setting up a non-residential project, whether it's an alteration or a newly constructed building. You got your MECO 4s, your PLB 22s, your PLB 21 would also be in here if you generated that form. All the rest of the rules are the same as what we have in the other ones. So that's it for here. If you have further questions about some of the functionality within site details, how it works, we do have a separate site details video that goes through all that process, as well as all the other functionality. So if you need more information, be sure to check out the CHEERS YouTube page, and we have videos covering all of the functionality located within the new CHEERS registry. So thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.